Good evening, everyone. Tonight is December 2nd. This is our 13th podcast of the year, my lucky number. Today we have a great cast for you tonight. We have a special guest, two special guests actually. We have Brett Lautenbach. Lautenbach? Did I say that right?
Lautenbach. Yeah, you're good.
Lautenbach, okay.
Hey.
From NRG. He is the president of NRG, which is also associated with San Francisco Shock and also Optic. So if you are familiar with any of those esports teams, he is in charge of them. And then our second special guest is our one and only Andy Mendez. Thank you for being here, Andy.
Hello.
If you guys don't know him, he's the behind the scenes guy. He handles a lot of the streams, a lot of the back end stuff with us, a lot of the overlays and fixing a lot of the graphics work behind the scenes for us.
Twitter.
And then, of course, my co-host down there at the bottom, Keith.
Hello again. I'm just always here.
He's just always here. I'm surprised, Keith, you didn't put your new lights behind you, or at least some of them, so we can...
Well, the thing is, the camera would just be destroyed then, because you'd see only the outline of me.
Oh, you're trying.
And so, because I have to get some light in my face.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's what happened.
Did you set the background lights to white in order for it to
Yes,
shine
I have.
better?
I mean,
That's
I
very
can
nice.
turn it to blue right now if you want to see how bad this looks.
No. You're fine.
You missed it. He gave us the show earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a great cast. We're going to talk to Brett about what he does, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in chat. We're really excited to start, having a lot more industry people in. I'll announce someone later on. For next week, we have a big show, and then obviously there's a new year. We're hoping to have a lot more guests on as well, trying to let you guys know what the esports industry is actually like, not what you see on Twitter, not what you see on Reddit, but what's actually talking hands-on to the people. So without further ado, Brett, if you want to give us a little background on you and how you got to where you are and what your day-to-day duties are at NRG.
Definitely. So I am the president across NRG, the San Francisco Shock, and Optic Chicago. I actually came to this job in a very weird roundabout way. I was a film school major in college in New York and ended up working in film festivals and stumbling backwards into working in the talent agency world at an agency called WME, which is a crazy world of you literally start in the mailroom hand delivering mail and work your way up, ostensibly to being an agent one day, going from mailroom to assistant to agent, so on and so forth. And I was there and working in what was called our non-scripted television department. That's a department that traditionally handles a lot of reality TV, but my boss, whose desk I worked on, was really focused on newscasters. So MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, CNBC, so on and so forth. And while I was there, I had grown up a very big esports and gaming fan. I grew up really on a lot of the Blizzard titles, played a heck of a lot of StarCraft, but also on the console side, a lot of Halo. So I was very familiar with the esports landscape. In college, StarCraft 2 came out and watched a ton of what at the time was Justin TV and is now Twitch, where we are today.
Oh, that is a throwback of a name.
Yeah, definitely. So I was watching the day 9 dailies there, trying to get better at StarCraft, still being stuck in gold or diamond. It was tough, but try to get better. And while I was working at WME, I started talking to some of the partners of the company, some folks who I considered mentors, and was like, hey, this esports thing and streaming thing and gaming thing is really starting to grow. And I think there's probably a place for us in it. So one thing led to another. They introduced me to the head of our digital department at WME, a great guy named Dan Porter, who now runs Overtime, if you're familiar with that app. They also have an esports component. And he was like, oh, esports, I get this. My son plays Dota 2. I love it. I think it's really great. Let's talk about what we can do here. And we pretty much came together with a few other folks and put together a strategy around how WME would get involved in esports. And that involved the idea of us acquiring different companies, building out, its own standalone department. And what we ultimately ended up doing is acquiring a company called Global Esports Management, GEM back in the day. This is probably 7 years ago at this point. And we brought them in. And what I did from there was I moved off of my day job of being an assistant in newscasters and working full-time as an esports agent, which was a weird thing to be because I wasn't actually representing any talent. It was more a business development role. And for us, what I was doing was first helping prop up what would eventually become a joint venture with Turner Sports and IMG called E-League, which is when we brought Counter-Strike to TBS, which was pretty wild and crazy experience.
I remember that. I was super excited when that happened. I was like, oh my God, this is on cable? Like what?
Yeah.
I watched a ton of E-League. I watched all of the E-League Major. Holy crap, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was amazing. Tobias Sherman and Simon Abitbol, who like really spearheaded that along with a guy named Minsick Ko, really, I think, helped build a system that made sense. And like the whole goal at that point in time was like, what if we took Counter-Strike and really just upped the level of production, really just upped how the players were treated, really tried to build a really cool narrative. We had awesome casters. We had guys like Richard Lewis, who just total rock star for the Counter-Strike community and so well known and respected across esports there hosting. And so that was really awesome. And what I ended up gravitating towards was actually kind of the brand side of the world. So WME had acquired a company called IMG. If you're not familiar with IMG, it was the original sports agency. It was the agency that turned professional sports athletes into superstars, starting with Arnold Palmer way back in the day, famous golfer. You might know him from his iced tea lemonade mixed drink. And they had a group at their company that WME had acquired called Global Strategy and Activations, which is a really boring name to say. They represented brands and helped them spend their money in really cool ways so that they could gain marketing value. So I started meeting with the folks over there, and they're like, hey, we're starting to get inbound from clients of ours, Rolex, Visa, what have you, about esports and about gaming and what it's about, how to be involved in it. Can you start talking to us, educating us internally, maybe talking to some of our clients, and maybe there's something here. It turned out there was something there very fast. We ended up signing Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light, convincing Bud Light to really lower their spend in golf, where Bud Light probably isn't as prominent. You don't assume a lot of older golfers are drinking Bud Light, and starting to spend in esports, and they're still spending in esports today. We also signed T-Mobile back in the day and helped bring them in and helped secure their kind of first deal with Overwatch League. We actually, just as the San Francisco Shock this past year, signed T-Mobile as a partner of ours. So it's nice that all came full circle. And while that kind of T-Mobile process was going, an interesting opportunity propped up for me, which, I kind of looked at and I was like, I don't know if I necessarily want to just work for brands the rest of my life on the agency side. And I kind of saw what that looked like. And I was like, I really want to get into building something. And I talked to my boss about that and talked to a few other people and said, hey, just like, if you hear of anything, hit me up. And it just so happened that right around that time and right around those T-Mobile pitches, NRG was looking for somebody new to kind of come in and, manage day-to-day business operations. And I got put in touch with Andy Miller, which was absolutely insane to me. And like, it's funny because I talk to Andy so much every day, like more, I talk to him more than I talk to my wife, and I live with her, and we're in quarantine together right now. So that should give you a sense of our work-life balance there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's great. Wouldn't have it any other way. He's a great guy. But I remember being just like absolutely terrified because you have this guy who, if you don't know the history of NRG or Andy Miller, like he has pretty much sold every company he started for hundreds of millions of dollars. He sold his last company to Apple and worked directly for Steve Jobs. And now he's a co-owner of the Sacramento Kings. Like, this guy's like a legend. Like, he's the take no prisoners legend. And so I ended up interviewing with him for like 3 weeks. And I was kind of getting antsy. So I was just kind of like, hey, I'm going to be in LA. I'm going down to do this pitch meeting with Overwatch League and T-Mobile. You're in San Francisco. It's a holiday weekend. I can literally just come up afterwards. My brother lives in SF. I can crash with him. Let's just put this thing to bed, meet up and hang out and decide whether or not this works for both of us. And he was like, no, don't worry about it. I'll come meet you in LA. Let's meet at LAX. We'll find like a restaurant to grab lunch at. In a horror story moment, we both land and realize we're at separate terminals. And if you've never been to LA, there's no interconnectivity between terminals.
You have to leave. Yeah.
You have to leave.
LAX is gigantic.
Yeah, and it's huge. So here's this guy who I'm trying to impress. I have no idea how to find him, let alone find a restaurant that we can both meet at, because once you leave security, you can't come back in and go to a restaurant. It turns out that in the center of LAX is this crazy like crossover like architecture thing that is ostensibly a cafeteria. I think it's mostly just for workers, but it's technically also open to the public. So we were like, okay, I guess we'll just meet there. It was like I love cheeseburgers. It was the worst cheeseburger I've ever had in my whole life. And we're just like in this dingy small cafeteria that's like dankly lit, just kind of shooting about it for 3 hours. What do I see this going into? Where has he been? What does he see as the vision for the company? And one thing led to another, and he was like, cool, well, when can you start? And I was like, great, give me like 3 weeks. I got to close up my job. I'd like to take like a few days off to like, mentally reset before I take on this huge responsibility. And then I got, into the saddle with NRG. And that was just over 4 years ago in September. So it's been 4 years since then. And, thinking back to where NRG was then and where it is now has been just an awesome ride.
The wonders of esports. You set up your big job in a airport cafeteria.
Yeah. It's esports is all about, expecting the unexpected or just trying to like get through every curveball that can possibly be thrown at you. So yeah, it's definitely, I'm happy it all worked out, but it was definitely felt like a wrench thrown in the whole process.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of awesome that it just like it came to be like, oh no, I'll meet you there. And, this big guy wants to talk to you and, give you this opportunity without, there being much of a basically esports field at that point. And that's awesome that you guys were able to make that meeting in, the airport, even though the odds were against you. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Story to how you got into being where you are at NRG.
So what's day-to-day like for you because president of an org is not a title that's very well explained or very well defined.
Well, I can tell you what I do day to day, Keith. I mean, I am the president. But you've never asked. Thanks.
There's
Thanks,
not
Keith.
come on. There's no comparing.
Yeah, it's I often say it's like the most like superfluous, like weird, hard to grasp title in any job, which pretty much means you have to do a little bit of everything. And the great thing about NRG in my time here has been that I feel like I've been a part of every job you can have at NRG. And part of that is when I joined, it was like myself and 3 other staff members, right? Like this was a small organization. They had just been coming off the back of getting relegated out of LCS. It was like, what the heck do we do now? They had just signed an Overwatch team with Siegel and those guys. They had a Counter-Strike team. We were just getting into Rocket League. Pretty much.
Did you join before or after the rebrand?
Before, so 4 years ago.
Because you guys were like a pink sort of scheme, and
right.
then we ran to the globe logo, and then immediately went to just the capital letters.
Yeah, so we originally had the pink color scheme. About a year into me being here, we moved over to the red base. Weirdly now, Andy and I always joke, like, whatever it was, like, right around that time in 2016, early 2017, like, pink merch was just not going to sell. And now it's like, I mean, like, I look at, like, an Overwatch League with, like, Runaway and, like, teams like that from Korea, like, pink sells. Like, I'd kill for that color scheme back on some level.
It didn't sell in... Okay, it's also a Western org thing. It didn't sell in Western orgs.
Yeah, it was interesting. So we switched to the red color scheme, and then I guess last year, a year and a half ago almost, we went with this kind of open thematic, which we had the globe logo, we had the letters. We primarily focus on just the letters now. I don't think you see much of the globe anymore, but yeah, that's kind of our brand history has continued to develop over the years. I think it's nice to be able to refresh it every so often. I know people get attached to it, but it's also cool then when I can go back and like pull out like old NRG merch. And also when I go to events and you see somebody in like an OG pink NRG jersey, that's like a badge of honor. Like I kind of dig that people can't get that anymore, because if I see somebody at like a Rocket League World Championship with that jersey, I'm like, that guy's been with us since day one of Rocket League. That's
legacy
huge.
Content.
Yeah, like I'm immediately, if that guy's over 21 or girl's over 21, I'm buying him a drink in 5 seconds, like no question asked.
Right.
But yeah, day-to-day job has certainly developed over the years. So when I started, it was a mixed bag. It was everything. I was working day in and day out, helping the social team on social copy, helping the marketing team, signing every player, helping scouting, helping all of that, working on partnerships, fulfilling partnerships. It was literally just like, is there a problem? Okay, how can I help solve it mentality? And the best part about that is it got me in the weeds on a lot of different things. The good news is as life has progressed here and we've brought on more staff and become more successful, started to have bigger sponsors, we we've been able to kind of formalize departments and have people have their roles. So on a day-to-day basis now, a lot of what I do is work with partnerships. So helping bring in new partners. Today, we just announced Visine as a partner for our Rocket League broadcast, The Grid. If you follow our LCS, we have a really cool broadcast called The Grid. It's a kind of play-in, for kicks tournament. It works for seeding for our LCS. Visine's our presenting partner of The Grid for the next 2 months, give or take. So excited about that one. So I work with onboarding them, and then I work with the activation team to help make sure that, like, hey, their logo goes up in the right spot, this tweet goes out at the right time. But then I also work on a lot of player signings, depending on the team and things like that. Less densely involved in that and more on the contract side now, just making sure that things are getting negotiated properly and key deal points are getting hit. And then working on kind of our league properties, working with folks at Overwatch League, working with folks at CDL, working with folks at RLCS, just maintaining kind of like how we're operating as a team, how they're operating as a league, and how we can continue to build things together. Like Rocket League's a great example of that. Like, Rocket League has grown a ton over the past 4 years.
Oh, it's been insane.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Like, I love it to death, and it's a great game. I'm a huge personal fan of it. There's a reason we've been in it for 4 years. I think, you look at how that's developed. It really took this grassroots kind of approach to like letting itself breathe and grow, not formalizing anything too crazy on top of it. But it got to a point where we kind of sat there, and I sat down with a lot of the folks at Psionics, and I was like, hey, like, this thing's big. Like, how can we take this to a next level? What can we do as a team? Like, we're out there, we have our starting three, but we also have Sis as a head coach and who's also a content creator for us. We have JZR, we have Musty Cow, all creating content for us. Like, we're trying to do Rocket League as big as we possibly can. Like, what else can we do together? And, hats off to the whole team over there. I mean, I remember having this conversation with Murdy like a year and change ago. And he was like, look, we're working on something. It's going to be big, but it's going to take a lot of personal responsibility from you guys to activate it. And it's only going to be as good as you guys make it. And so he came back and, outlined the plan for our LCS season 10, which is awesome. If you're not watching it, it's been really cool.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, it's great. He was like, we're going free to play. That's going to be massive, huge onboarding of players. And we're also going to start this thing called The Grid, which is going to be a $500,000 sub tournament to RLCS proper, where it will affect your seeding in RLCS and at major tournaments. There's also cash behind it, but it also gives a chance for the up and coming teams that aren't in RLCS proper to show their stuff and like start getting out there and really being used as kind of a development tool for talent, which is so deeply important. I can talk ad nauseum about that, and you can get into it in a minute if you want. But he was like, this is all the stuff. But here's the thing about that Grid thing. You guys have to own the broadcast. If you guys want to do it, it's all yours. We're not just going to hand you guys a check and say like, welcome to Rocket League. Here's a stipend to make sure you guys can sign players. It's like, you guys have to put in the work and the effort. And we took that as a challenge. We're like, hell yeah, we're going to blow this thing out. So right. we went pretty big on it, and it's been super exciting. Definitely, follow us along on Twitter and stuff like that if you can, because the schedule kind of floats around. But I think our next, it was going on while we were playing, so hopefully we won, but we were in the finals against a space station. But I think the next ones are early January, like January 4th and 5th.
Yeah, it's been insane to watch just the growth of Rocket League as a game itself and also as an esports platform. I mean, the esports broadcast would pull in maybe 20,000 viewers like a year and a half ago, and now they're blowing out basically everything out there. Yeah,
the growth has been huge. I think I'm really excited to see the long-term lift of free-to-play and what that does to the community. Just, even on a baseline level of where we are with viewership now, the other things that it makes a huge impact on are regions that Rocket League is still developing in. So like South America, India, China, places where Korea, pretty much all of Oceania, places where traditionally the entire esports culture is built around free-to-play games, because the entire culture is built around PC cafes and kind of just people don't want to spend money on games. They'll spend on skins, on whatever, what have you, season passes, but for the primary game, they don't want to spend $1 for it. So it's pretty exciting to see kind of what will develop out of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Rocket League, just as we've been seeing it definitely, the nicest thing about Rocket League is it goes across all K through 12. Like you can be like, my daughter watches me play Rocket League because I'm working on doing some curriculum for it. And she watches me play Rocket League, and she's like, "Daddy, can you show me how to play?" And it's like, "Yeah, why not? It's free to play. I can download it on the Xbox that she has in her room." And
it's like one of the only things that a school board won't question me on.
Yeah,
it's car soccer.
It's soccer, but the players are actually cars, and they're like, "What?" And they don't worry about it. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, like we deal with obviously a lot of partners and sponsorships and things like that, and like a lot of brands we go and talk to are like, "Hey, like I'm not going to touch Call of Duty. I'm sorry, like it's realistic violence with guns and yada yada yada." And we had a similar issue with a lot of partners in Counter-Strike back in the day. And I can show them Rocket League, and like, not only is it one of the only esports that doesn't have guns or violence in it, it's also like you watch Rocket League for 5 minutes and you get it. You just get it on a baseline level.
Yeah, the entry level is so low.
Yeah. And then you go and play it and you realize you're like, wait, am I playing the same game that those guys were playing? Because like they are in the air 24/7
all the time.
sitting on the ground.
I literally have been doing research because we're doing this curriculum for it and teaching kids how to play like upper level. And I'm like, wait, what? You can do a diagonal flip while you're boosting and to go fast. I'm like, I never would have thought of that. And then watching like I forgot what they called the half flips to turn around, and I'm like, what's a half flip? Like, because I never actually played competitively, and I just played for fun. And then once I started getting to the point where people were in the air, I'm like, this is not the game I like. I like the on the ground game, playing the zone, and got in the air, and I'm like, no. But then now, like learning about it, I'm like, oh, maybe I can be a little bit better once I figure out what these skills are, because I just haven't been in that esports realm. So.
My players all talk about like there's this rank cutoff where suddenly everyone's flying and you're like, I don't know what's going on, I'm scared.
Yep.
And then
aerial cutoff.
You just gotta figure it out, or you don't play the game anymore.
Yeah.
For me, my favorite thing about Rocket League is playing when I played my placements, because I wanted to see where I actually would place. It's funny because you can see it as I went up. It's like like you count on them to clear the ball, and it's going towards their net, but you're like, okay, they're gonna hit it, and everyone just misses it, and you're like, oh, let me just go booping in. And then as you climb up the ranks, they're like, oh, well, 2 missed it, the third guy hit it, and then as you're in the higher ranks, like, oh, that ball was up in the air, I didn't even have a chance to hit that one. Like,
and then a teammate comes just across the screen and grabs it.
Yep. And I was like, okay, well, I think this is about where I tap off. I think I'm going to stop here and wait for the next season, and I'll try again and see where I place then and go from there. But yeah, no, definitely there is that plateau where you hit it, and then it just climbs again. And so but it's awesome to see that it's super accessible, and again, like we were saying, it's one that the school boards have no problems with. We do have to do a little talking with Overwatch, although we've been really successful with Overwatch because again, it's cartoony, they're not really dying, they're coming back, and it's actually not about the killing at all. It's
Valorant might cause some issues here because we're starting our Valorant season this weekend.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wanted to actually ask you about this because I saw the Valorant esports scene start and hit a major tournament in 6 months, all during COVID. So what's been the management of a professional organization been like during COVID, especially given that you started a whole new scene?
Yeah. COVID has been interesting for us. So like on one level, it's weirdly business as usual. We're a pretty remote company. We just always have been. We just kind of hire people where they live, and by luck and happenstance, a lot of us happen to be in LA now. I moved here literally because I was living in New York and hated working East Coast hours into West Coast time, where most of the employees were either in NorCal.
That's fair.
Yeah. And so on like a day-to-day work business level, it's all pretty similar. We're all used to just being on, Google Hangouts together for calls and, getting through stuff that way. In terms of like the idea of launching an esport during COVID, it's been super interesting. Like with Valorant specifically, it's really interesting to watch that come to life because obviously Riot had a lot grander plans that in a non-COVID world there would already have been LANs and so on and so forth, and it's all online now. But from like hey, there's kind of a vacuum, people are stuck inside playing video games component, it's great to release a game in this because people are excited, people want something to do, and it's new and exciting and engaging, and it's a great game. Like it's the fundamentals of Counter-Strike with a lot of different spiciness thrown in and a lot of different insanity. So that's been really cool to see. And from an organization perspective like us, we were actually pretty slow rolling on it. We love Riot Games. I love the folks over there and what they're doing. I think once it started, we were like, okay, let's just kind of pause and see what happens. the biggest thing and our first big insight into what competitive Valorant was going to look like was candidly Sinatra leaving the San Francisco Shock going to play Valorant. And he was getting paid from the roster over there at Sentinels. And I'm not giving you guys any secret sauce or anything. It's been out there. He's making as much money, if not more, at Sentinels than he was making on San Francisco Shock. And I was like, wow, like I'm looking at Overwatch, which I know is a developed game. I know when a season is, I know how I can get money out of it from a partnership standpoint. I know how merchandise sells. I know all of these things about Overwatch, and somebody's willing to throw just big bank bucks at a new player in a new game. That's a little terrifying to me.
It was impressive to see how many, like, was it 4 NA orgs just jumped out immediately and just signed teams.
Yep, right away. And I think shocked too. Yeah, I think there's like this thing that like when there's a new game with a good developer that people are like, hey, this is going to be an esport. There's a lot of like, hey, I got to get there first, have a good team first, so I can kind of build myself up. And for a lot of teams who aren't seeing success in other areas, that's their only option, right?
Yeah.
Like that's all they can do.
That's like their Hail Mary, be like, hey, we're going to hit it big in here. We're going to get there first.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. And like, it works out for some and it doesn't for others. And for some of them, they're like, hey, like I know Riot and I can get this done. For us, we were like, let's just take a slow approach. We didn't want to kind of get into the rat race right at the beginning. We wanted to be slow and methodical about who we were going to pick up, trusted folks. And we kind of looked at it from the same way that we look at just about everything else we get in, which is like, we get in, we learn as much as possible. We continue to build, we continue to develop. We hire people we know we can trust. I mean, you look at Chet, Daps, who were the first 2 people we talked to for that roster, like, both of them used to work for us. It's not a surprise we would go for them. We know their work ethic. We know their strategy, their mind, their everything that they're going to put into this game. And we know they're also very good at developing other talent around them. Daps has one of the best records in Counter-Strike for that.
Yeah, Daps was known as the guy in Tier 1 and Tier 2 CS of you buy him and then he just builds a team. And then that team goes on to be successful.
Yeah. And so we were like, this is great. And Daps and Chet both love each other. They've got a great working relationship and did when they were both here together. So that's kind of where we started, and we started building from there and figured like, all right, how are we going to kind of piece this all together to make a team that's going to work? And it's a slow process. Like I was joking with newly verified on Twitter, Jamie, our GM. I say that as a joke because he complained for years that he wasn't verified on Twitter.
Oh my God.
He's going to look at this and he's going to say, 2 months ago, over half our team was playing Counter-Strike full-time as a job. Now they're playing Valorant. Like, it's going to take time. Like, this is a whole new muscle memory. It's a whole new strategy memory. So, we're in it, I think, for the long haul and really committed to it. I love the game. I think it's great. I also, I'm partial to those types of games. I grew up playing 1.6 in Counter-Strike. And, there's pretty much 2 games that I think rest above everything else in, like, the history of esports. I'd actually throw Rocket League into this now, that are just, like, perfect observable esports. And it's StarCraft, Counter-Strike, and I make a really hard case for Rocket League in this too. Yeah. And they're just like, they're very, very good observable games. StarCraft's tough for a lot of people because it's very dense and hard to get into, but it's perfect. It's flawless. You can never talk about something that was my baby that way. But Counter-Strike is, again, it's another game where you watch it for 10 minutes and you get what's going on.
You can't kill Counter-Strike. There's been it's gone through so many bad phases and it's still posted 200K viewers.
Yep.
Allow me to interject. Congratulations on beating Space Station 4-3.
I was gonna say I saw the tweet notification come in that we won the grid today, so that's great. Super stoked about that.
Yeah, you were talking, and I wanted to interrupt and be like, you're on Game 7, 3-3. I wanted to get you a little stressed out about it.
Don't give me a heart palpitation.
Yeah. Congratulations on the win.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's the grid's been fun. It's definitely helped, I think, just like add in some extra excitement throughout the year.
If I can ask a question.
Yeah, please.
What is it like having the castle? Talk to me a little bit about the castle.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been in. Tell me a little bit more about the development and then how it is now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, have I been in? I was there. I remember when Grady Rains and I went and saw it the first time. We were like, oh, this is the one. Like, we looked at a ton of places. I remember, like, we looked at ones that were way smaller and different. We looked at one where, like, it was perfect in theory, except it was so close to LAX that like every 20 minutes there was an airplane going overhead. And like, it's like, Grady, we're never going to be able to film here because every 20 minutes you're going to have to do a sound check for freaking airplanes. So, I mean, I remember when we walked in that place and it was just bare stripped concrete. And to see where it is now is all hats off to Grady and all the staff he put together to build that thing, because it's exceptional. The idea for us really was born out of a few different things. One, we don't like just being like everyone else. We try to like to do our own things a little bit, be a little different. And the other was, what do we need and what do our players need? And we talked to a lot of players. We're like, we'd like to put down a physical footprint at some point. We don't have one. As I mentioned earlier, we're a very digital company. And we talked to a lot of players about kind of the trend of training facilities. And most of our players are like, I don't know that we really need a training facility. Like, we're doing really well. Like, Rocket League was on the verge of winning world championships and then did win one. Shock was already winning world championships. All of our teams were doing really well. Fortnite guys were crushing it. We were able to find that without a big training facility, we were able to succeed really well, just kind of instructing and building really good ecosystems for teams. So we were immediately like, that's not the move for us. And we started talking to a lot of players about what they wanted, what they needed, and kind of thought about what our org wanted and our org needed. And we decided to create this space mostly as like just an over-the-top absurd, like Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory for gaming, or if you're old like me, Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory for gaming.
Oh my god.
There you go. See? And the way we looked at it was like, let's build this thing. Then COVID hit. We had just started kind of outlining it and building it.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask, what is the timeline with COVID and everything?
Yeah.
We
rented this thing in like November of last year, and then started doing mock-ups, plans, everything. Then we started bringing in like real professional set designers, production designers from like Hollywood types, like people who do production on The Good Place and other things. And they just like went to town on it. And then COVID hit, which super slowed us down, but it also gave us this opportunity where a lot of these folks who tended to work on TV production, movie production, didn't have any other jobs or anything else to do. So they kept coming back to us like, hey, I've got this other idea. Could we try doing this? And we'd be like, yeah, sure. Okay, let's go. And they just ended up putting a lot more of their, I think, heart and mind into it, because they weren't just looking for a next job. They were like, this is probably the only job I'm going to have for the next few months, which is great. And they did a killer job. And, the goal for us is, let's create a place that we can create content out of nonstop. We can fly players in. We can have our players in LA that are here just churning out content left and right, and also start churning out content for their own platforms and their own channels too, because that's another huge part of like kind of the pro gamer atmosphere is like, yes, you might be a pro player right now, but like there's a timeline on that. And what are you going to do after? Well, a lot of these folks, a lot of our players want to stay on and be content creators. And if you're not optimizing across Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, so on and so forth, you're going to fall behind on that front. So the San Francisco Shock also practice out of there. We do have a really cool 3-room kind of practice room in there that's all soundproof and everything. So 2 scrim rooms and a coaching room. So it's pretty dope.
Man, I want a soundproof practice room.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah, I know. That would be really nice.
It's the dream.
Because our practice room is 2 feet from the auditorium. So we hear the musicians doing all that stuff, and we're just in there screaming.
Did you have to hire any in-person staff for like just operations as far as the castle goes, or a lot of those people that are in your organization now pivoting to multi-roles as you had to do in the past?
I mean, the fortunate thing is we did a lot of contracting work for like actual like build out, like folks who can build and design stuff like that. Sure. Everything else handled in-house. The 2 things that Andy and I very much, Andy, our CEO, aligned on pretty early, just philosophies we both had, me from coming from the agency world and film and TV before that, and him coming from the startup world, was we're very much like all belief in the horizontal company. And what that means, if you're not super familiar, is like you can build your company really vertically stacked, where it's like this person at the top, and then there's this division, and then that division, and this division, and this division. And if you're at this division, you're never talking to, in camera, if you're way down here, you're probably never talking to the guy way up there. And that's not something that I want to be a part of. I feel like when you're that guy down here, you really don't have a lot of fealty or feel a lot of responsibility for the company you're in. You'll probably leave. If you build it horizontally, where it's like, hey, like everyone's just kind of hanging out like around each other, people feel like they have way more ownership. They're way more interested in doing more work. They're way more interested in doing work in other departments and getting to know what those other departments are like. And that's, ultimately how I feel like you build the best organization. It's tough to do. Don't get me wrong. And you have to find the right type of people that want to work with you that like bleed for your company, which is not easy. And like, there's certainly people that like just aren't going to be culture fits for the type of company we are. Like, I love that Jamie, our GM, I hired him almost 4 years ago now, right after I was here for 4 months. And I was like, I need an extra hand just to help me out on everything. And so I hired him, and he helped out with like partnership management, just making sure, contracts, like I was getting contracts back, things like that. And, one day he comes to me and he's like, this is all great and cool. I'm like so happy to be here, because he was doing overnights at the NBA, which is a thankless job and tiring. And he's like, but I really want to get into the talent side of things. Like, I want to start working with players. And so like we slowly started like testing him out in that. And like he would spend more of his time working with different folks around the talent space, and picked up a lot there, and just like taking on more and more responsibility, and be like trying to fill more of his day because he had the time. And one thing led to another. And now he's general manager for NRG and does tons of player scouting, signing, negotiations, and all that stuff. So like, that's the benefit of building a company that way, and having that kind of area where it's like, hey, I really like what I'm doing, but I also want to see what this is like. And also, like, we have big moments. We have things where stuff is crazy, like, around world championships, around new game launches, things like that. And it's like, we need all hands on deck to help out.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's kind of like one thing that I've kind of seen, like, and I've always tried to do is be able to try have, jack of all trades. Because, running this org and just doing anything that I do, it helps to be able to pull in anything. Like, did a little casual streaming, and I know how to run a tournament, and, knowing how to manage and train staff and things like that. I think it really comes into handy to be able to get into all those things. And if you're helping the people at your company be cross-trained, they might want to shift over, and that's great, because you want to see them, be happy about moving laterally, or, maybe at a slight incline, inside your org, and doing something that they love. Maybe they just got in to get in, get that starter job at the esports, company, but then being able to allow them to have that flexibility to try new things and explore and have a stake in the company, rather than just, hey, I'm here to like check you guys in and take your coats.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
No one works in this industry because they're looking for a 9-to-5 job. Like, that's the reality. Like, if you want to work in esports, or you end up working in esports, you're doing it, I hope, because you deeply love it. It's not worth the stress, the hours, the chaos of this space if you don't absolutely love it every day. Like, you'll just burn yourself out super fast. Like,
are you directing this at me, or is it just an accident?
He does a lot. He does a lot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Todd, be careful how you speak. I might leave.
Oh, great.
Well, Brett, if you ever need someone to sweep the floors in the rage room, you can give me a call. I'll be there.
There you go.
I also know how to plug stuff into computers. So hey,
there you go.
There's my multi-pivot.
Brett, I have a question for you, because you are local to the area here in Chicago, or Chicago area, I should say. What do you think it would take for Chicago to become the next esports hub? A lot of stuff is in LA, a lot of stuff is in California, and you have some stuff on the East Coast. The majority of esports is based on that West Coast. What do you think it would take to make Chicago a hub? I mean, like, Riot has their servers here, and there's a couple, smaller companies, some not so small, but still have affiliates and small offices. But what would it take for Chicago to become that esports hub? I mean, if people don't know, we are this booming industry in Illinois right now for esports. Yeah. It's all hidden. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's here. I mean, just to give you a background on our schools, like, we have 70 high schools right now participating in esports right now, and I have about 200 total that want to get involved in it. So between those 70 and another 130 who are trying to plan it out and figure it out, especially in this COVID thing, things have slowed down exponentially. But I think it's just prime to do it. But I don't know what is holding people back. I mean, I don't know if you just saw they just announced an esports arena in the South Loop of Chicago. Surge. I think that's a great thing for us, but I would love to see more professional stuff happen here. We did have League of Legends World a while ago. We do have the Huntsman, which is awesome. That we do have a team that represents Chicago.
All right, Optic Chicago.
I think the big thing. The biggest thing that will move esports to any location is going to be the events that exist there, and dragging those events in is a lot of different aspects. Like, one, are they going to draw crowds and sell out? That's the number one thing. You look at like Columbus, Ohio is I think a great example. Is like Columbus ended up becoming this hub for esports because MLG put its foot down there and was like, hey, we're gonna start hosting events here. And the Midwest in general has this amazing thing, which I mean, you're all from the Midwest or grew up in Naperville, Illinois, like people will drive. It doesn't matter if it's 3 hours, 4 hours. Like if the idea of me driving 4 hours anywhere in California or New York when I've lived there in my life is like insane. But like I would drive 4 hours in a heartbeat to go watch a movie that wasn't playing at a movie theater near me when I was growing up. Like we'd drive 3 hours down to Southern Illinois to go to a Sonic because it was the only Sonic in Illinois State back in the day.
I drove 3 hours to Chicago for IEM Chicago 2 years in a row.
Exactly. See, it's like people can get drawn from all over. And so I think once those events continue to start popping up, and it's a hard answer because like right now, obviously no events are happening. I think the more tournament organizers that say, hey, there's an opportunity here to do something cool in the Chicagoland area, the more will start to pop up. And it just takes that investment into it. Like having that esports arena is great because it's going to start giving a repeatable, hopefully, activation for that. And the groundswell from that usually tends to come from community events. So people starting to put together like, hey, how big of a community CSGO tournament, community Rocket League tournament. And, you know, developers love when people are doing this stuff responsibly and well organized and paying out prize pools on time because it's just a good sign for their game.
People pay out prize pools?
Yeah.
You're supposed to pay those things?
It's wild.
Wait, we're supposed to charge for them to play in the tournament?
So I think as you kind of build up those grassroots movement, go from kind of locals to kind of regionals and things like that, and then start to see larger tournaments come into play, whether or not it's IEM Chicago, it's League of Legends Worlds, it's other things that are kind of, you know, local stuff. That's what's going to start driving people there. It certainly doesn't hurt to have a developer based in your city. That's kind of the thing about Los Angeles that has really, you know, cut it above the rest is that Activision Blizzard are here, and so is Riot Games. I mean, like that's two of your biggest esports developers.
Big powerhouses.
You know, Seattle is pretty much an esports town because Valve is there, and they hosted the International there for pretty much every year the International existed, except for the past 2 years. So that's kind of the big thing. Like I think it's that event drive is huge to make the Midwest first and foremost, and we've seen I think, you know, a fair amount of success out of the events that have been there, whether that's IEM Chicago or the League of Legends Worlds event that happened there. I mean, when we were supposed to host a formerly Chicago Huntsman, now Optic Chicago event in April, and like we sold out in seconds, like when we were selling tickets. Like it was
I know. When you guys sold out, I was like, oh, I was gonna see if I can get a ticket for that, and you know, maybe see if I can get some tickets for like kids to go or give away or something like that. And then COVID happened, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't have to worry about asking now because I literally, when I saw it when it was like March, it was like right before COVID. I was like, oh, I need to hit them up. They literally, I think that's when I started following you and everyone else on Twitter and social media. I was like, oh, I'll send them a message and see what's going on about that, because I was like, oh, they got an event, we can maybe do something there and you know, broaden our, you know, scope of being out there, because a lot of people don't even know that we exist, and so it's kind of nice to get the word out. You know, they're like, oh, hey, we're gonna go do this esports thing. I did a Google search, and luckily we actually are pretty good on Google. They just searched esports in Illinois or Chicago, and we pop up. So luckily that's we're hitting high on that one. But yeah, no, it's awesome to see some of these events come. I'm just hoping it keeps growing, and I mean, COVID like put a big kibosh on that, which is super unfortunate, because I mean, it even canceled our LAN events last year. We were planning a giant LAN event at
it was going to be so cool.
Heard of Ignite Gaming? Have you ever been or heard of it?
Yeah.
So Big Gaming Lounge, they opened a new one in Skokie that's adult, has adult beverages as well. But we wanted to host like essentially our League of Legends finals there last year, as well as having a college fair. You know, I had a list of like 20, 25 schools I was going to have come to be able to talk to students about, you know, their school and, you know, kind of making this combo esports college fair type thing. And then everything ended up getting canceled because of COVID. And it was super unfortunate, because I was so super excited to actually do a much bigger event than we normally have done in the past. So.
Yeah, well, we had planned for that, and also for Overwatch that season. It was going to be super cool.
Oh, yeah, we hosted at Naperville North.
Yeah, it was going to be such a cool event, and then lockdown.
Yeah. I was just getting ready to send Brett an email, actually, when COVID was like in. We were like, are we gonna leave? Are we not? And so we had met as a committee first, and we're like, okay, are we still gonna host the IHSEA Overwatch? Okay, we're gonna wait to see what Governor Pritzker says.
And then Pritzker said, done.
I actually had an email already drafted. I'm like, hey, we're hosting the Overwatch finals for IHSEA. You know, you should come by and see the school. And then, you know, COVID. So there was that.
Tough.
Yeah.
I mean, so technically, I hosted the last LAN of the school year last year.
You did.
Yeah,
you did.
The Rocket League
me and
finals.
me and my little lab, and that all you cowards didn't drive down to.
Whoa. I was busy doing other things.
That's a long drive.
Oh, it's 3 hours.
We just finished talking about how people will drive in the Midwest. We just
There you
finished
go.
talking about that.
Yeah, but we're not. They're gonna drive to Chicago. We're not gonna drive down there.
I mean, I have corn. I have corn in that direction and that direction.
Great.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, no, that's awesome, and I'm really hoping that we see more things here, and I think
Too.
there is a future in Chicago, especially Surge. I had talked to them actually back in February. They did their presentation for me, and asked me what we thought about it, and I was like, this is great, and especially if they allow us to use their facility and host things there, like that's one of the big things that we struggle with, because most schools don't have enough equipment to host anything, and the only place that we could was Robert Morris, because they had 45, 50 machines there. And most colleges don't have that all in one place. And now that Robert Morris is now into Roosevelt and it's not as big of a program, it's kind of let us out. And that's kind of why we were going to go to Ignite and do it there, because we really didn't have a place. But now actually having an official arena is hopefully going to be really good for the city, good for the state, and good for everyone who wants to utilize it.
We can also
That'll
look
be
at ISU eventually, because ISU's lab is gigantic.
Yeah, and ISU is even getting bigger from when he was talking on the podcast. Within a year or two, they're going to be even bigger, which is awesome to see, right in the middle of the state too.
Yeah. Super centrally located.
One question everyone always asks, and especially our students, before we go, is if they want to get into esports, whether it's a player. Well, let's start with players. Like if they're looking to get into esports, and maybe they're grand champion now, or Supersonic in Rocket League, or Challenger in League of Legends, what would be your suggestion for them to get noticed by an org?
Yeah. First, grind. I mean, it's a lot. Get up to that upper echelon. Assuming you're there, I mean, the best things you can do are be active in the community. Like if you're in the Discords for that community, if you're on Twitter, if you're streaming, if you're posting on YouTube, like those are all easy ways to get noticed. It's also how you help build the community around you, because so often, I mean, sure, there's a leaderboard in Overwatch. You can sit there and say like, okay, Choi is the best person in the US this month or whatever, and what have you. But the delineation between those people can sometimes be massive in terms of, do they work well with other players? Do people like playing with them? Do they work as a team? Do they know how to come? Do they do all these things? And that's all going to come from other players talking to you, and then coaches talking to you and bringing you for scrims. And so having a community of people around you, at least digitally, that are also those top tier players is going to be super helpful. And the best way to communicate with them is obviously first in game, then Discords, just being active, talking with them, queuing up together and things like that. That's, going to be huge. I say be social while gaming is important. And then also remember that this industry is deathly small. So don't be a jerk.
Word of mouth matters so much. There's a couple people in Counter-Strike, especially when I've been following that have basically just been shut out of the industry entirely because no one wants to work with them.
Totally. I mean, it happens. And like, it's rare to find teams that want to go through the effort of like rehabilitating you and working with you in that. Like we're an odd duck in Overwatch specifically. And they're like, we've brought in a lot of players who like were known as either people who had a bad attitude or were troublemakers, whether or not it's, Baby Bay, who, people were like, I hate Baby Bay. And we signed him, and he was like the villain of Overwatch League in a lot of ways. But he's the sweetest guy in the world, Chicago boy, hockey player, total sweetheart. You like a rascal, like he was like pretty much punted from Overwatch League. We picked him up in contenders, and we're like, you've been punted from 2 teams. Like, come work with us. We'll help you get in line. Just like listen to us and like be a team player. And he was. So I think that, your reputation there can't be spoken to enough. Like, just don't be a total toxic jerk.
Yeah, and I always try to tell kids that, like, that no matter what games you're playing, if you're grinding, you're going to see other people from our league. Like I said, we're a big league, and, you know, especially if you put your clan tag up there for your school, they'll recognize it. Like, I've played with several kids and former students just randomly queuing up for a flex queue game. And so
2 weeks ago in warm-up, before the Overwatch or the Oswego East match, both teams, my team and the Oswego East team, both met in quick play 10 minutes before actual match.
Yeah.
And we lost the quick play game, and my guy's like, "Oh crap, what now?" But it was just the funniest things. Like, when I'm looking at tags, like getting ready to invite the guys. I'm like, wait, I recognize that tag. And I look at the entire list, and it's their entire team.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So that's super. From a player perspective, I think that's super important. From like hey, I want to be staff in esports. I want to work on a team. I want to work, at an agency. I want to work wherever. You have the world at your fingertips, truly, in Twitter and Discord. Like, start hitting people up. Like, people are busy, so don't spam them, but also follow up with them. If you can find their email address, drop them an email. Like, I'm notorious of just like, if new people are reaching out, we were talking about this before the podcast, like, and they're sliding into my DMs and it goes into like my unfiltered DM list. It's like, sometimes I'll check that, and if I catch it at the right time, I'll respond. If you don't hear back for 2 weeks, try it again. But I think that that's super important. Like, you can get in touch with people. Like, you want to learn how to cast and things like that. Like, start following the casters you really like, get to know who they are, watch them on stream, donate, ask a question, be like, hey, like, how did you get started? Everyone wants to help bring up other people. Like, this is a big community. I will say, like, I've been working in it for 6 years, and I see the same thing today that I saw back then, which is like, the old guard wants this thing to continue, and they want to help shepherd people into being smart and responsible members of this community, so that it can grow and get bigger. So I think that lean on that and be good people, and hit people up on LinkedIn, on Discord, on social media, and just put yourself out there. It's the biggest thing.
You see, Todd, LinkedIn. I'm telling you.
I have not opened my LinkedIn in like 3 years.
I am a LinkedIn fiend, and Todd is always like, I hate that you're so active on LinkedIn. The grind never stops.
It's true. I'm currently not looking for a job, nor looking for many of the services offered by LinkedIn. So I'm set with that. But, I definitely think like LinkedIn is really interesting, because there is like a certain group of people that share stuff, and just it's a circle thing, and like, oh, I shared this with you, and then kind of goes all around. And it's funny because I always like open up LinkedIn and I'm like, oh, this is like poor man's Facebook, and just seeing like some of the features on it, it's like it looks like it's a little behind still. But definitely for jobs, like I always see postings for jobs and always get see things on there. And I think that's important for industry.
It's an easy way to find people. It's like, you're mentioning Steel Series based in Chicago. It's like, you literally just go search Steel Series and see everyone who works at Steel Series, and you can, if you pony up and buy a LinkedIn premium account, you can go hit their inbox once and just be like, hey, where's a good place to apply? Are you guys hiring? Here's my CV. I'm really passionate about, Chicago esports, and you guys are one of the only Chicago esports, companies out there that focuses around an esports community. So
I'm assuming it's advised against to DM every single person you can find on LinkedIn for that org.
Yeah. I mean, like, you got to have like a little bit of pump the brakes action there, but I definitely think like, and it might not always work. It's not. It's about being resilient and continuing to try and get there.
Yeah, and like you said before, it's about being, the better person for it, and also having a community around you and being part of other parts of community, so that they see you're not just, hey, I just randomly looked up the Chicago-based company and I'm just hitting you up, whether you're in, their Discord or, tweeting and retweeting their Twitter. Like, they do notice those things. And I think it's interesting that kids, like we always tell all the coaches, like, create a Twitter for your esports program, because it will get you a lot more. Like, esports, it lives on Twitter and Reddit, and it's really important that you get on there and promote your school, because it'll promote it across the way, and then people will see it. And so they're like, oh, are you sure it's Twitter? And it's like, I've been talking with this other company that's working on, we're going to actually have them on in 2 weeks. I'm talking about their platform. It's, basically a way to host college programs. And so you can look up not only the esports program they have, but also the college statistics, like what majors they offer there, where are they at, rural or city or things like that. And it's like, you guys need to get on Twitter. Like, you're missing out on so much contact with people of being on Twitter, because that's where esports live, especially that high school and collegiate level. Lives on there. And then, like you said, you can always just reach out. Like, there are, pros that have DMs open that you can feel free to reach out to them and ask them for things. Like,
that is a scary thought for some. I can't imagine being a pro in esports and having your DMs open. The hate mail you must get after matches must be scary.
This is part of the training regimen, is never read Reddit as a professional player. It's tough.
I can only imagine.
Our first season of Overwatch, I mean, I remember walking into the scrim room afterwards and like watching like us lose a match. It was a rough year. We knew we were going to have a rough time season 1. It was just how we built the team. But I remember walking into the scrim room after matches and just seeing players scrolling through Reddit, reading just like hate comments. I'm like, you have to stop. Like, no more Reddit. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Just it's not worth it.
Yeah.
One of the only pros I know who browses Reddit constantly is Doublelift from League. Like
Yeah.
he has
Wow.
clips of him browsing Reddit on his stream highlights.
He's a different. We all know that he's a different breed of esports athlete. Where we found that he sucks up all that energy, right? And that's what Doublelift I think is.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been going for
Awesome.
almost an hour here. Brett, did you have anything else that you wanted to mention or plug? I mean, we talked about the castle a little bit. That was really cool. I was looking at pictures because I had just heard about that too, and I was like, oh, what? I didn't want to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. Check it out. Follow us on Twitter. We've always got stuff going on. NRG, GG. I think that's
I'll
right.
post it.
Maybe
Yep,
an extra G
NRG,
there.
GG.
But it's definitely follow us there. Keep following esports. Keep being passionate about it. Find the games you love and get involved in the communities. I mean, this is really just a community thing. Like esports only exists because a bunch of people got together and were like, I like this game and I want to play with other people. It's that simple. It's a lot bigger now than it was back then, but like at its core, it's got to stay that way, and it's going to stay that way. And it's a small community, so be nice to each other too.
Yeah, great. And that's
There
kind of
we
how
go.
we got started. We were just a bunch of teachers that ended up at a LAN event with a bunch of our kids, and we're like, hey, why don't we just create this state org? Because we know the state's not going to do it for a while, and lo and behold, 4 years later, they still are not ready to do it yet, and we've been going strong. So,
Who would have known? It would have been that group of teachers, and I was a student
Yeah.
playing in that tournament at the time.
I was still in college. I actually just had my AD asked yesterday. So when's IHSEA getting on? And I'm like, I don't know.
yeah.
well,
If COVID did, again, here we go. If COVID didn't hit, we would be getting ready for spring sanctioned esports in the state. But right now they're dealing with all of the issues with regular sports, especially with the governor canceling things, people still wanting them to play. And so they haven't been pushed it. But we are reaching out to them and saying, hey, are we still moving forward with this at some point so we can possibly get a plan in for next year, if at all? Because we don't, that's the one thing I keep trying to tell and people is like, our after school activities are canceled. I was like, but esports doesn't have to. Like everything can be done remote esports. It's set up that way. Yes, kids might not have the opportunity to do it, but why not give the opportunity to kids who can play Rocket League at home? Or play League or play, Valorant or whatever it might be. Like, why not give them opportunity? Even though we have kids interested in it and they don't have the equipment, but we would have it at school if we were there. But it's not fair to everyone who does. So we're trying to work with schools on that and talk to their administration and be like, esports can be done remotely and trying to show everyone that, you don't have to cancel all your activities. You can still do most of these activities remotely. It just takes a lot more planning, up front because they're used to the old guard. Hey, we got to show up with our paper and our paper roster and turn in our paper roster to you and, trade rosters at the beginning of the game.
I'm getting roster changes up until the day of matches for Valorant. Yeah. I guarantee it. If Lamzik is watching, can you stop DMing me with new subs? He is exceeding our sub count consistently.
Oh yeah, he's the one that said that. Can you add like 17 more subs?
Shout out to Thug Nasty 17. That is Overwatch League and San Francisco Shock General Manager in the chat.
Oh,
hey, welcome.
Nice to see him in chat.
Well, Thug Nasty, we can tell you that this is the Brett Box. We got the Brett Box on the channel here.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for coming on and
appreciate
taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, later, guys.
All right, have a great night, guys.
Thank you.